Welcome to All Business, No Boundaries, a collection of supply chain stories by DHL Supply Chain, the North American leader in contract logistics. I'm your host, Will Haywood. This is a place for in-depth discussions on the difference DHL makes on your supply chain challenges. Today's episode is Stitching Speed and Scale, how FIGS built an agile supply chain with DHL. Let's dive in. Today's episode, we're going to talk about a new and fast-growing partnership. We're joined by FIGS, which is a brand that's really redefined what modern medical equipment can be. FIGS has built a passionate community by combining performance, design, and purpose. And as they continue to scale, their supply chain is evolving right alongside. We have two great guests. John, welcome from FIGS. We're going to start with you. Paige will come on to you in a second, but I'd like you to both introduce yourselves. Tell us who you are, what your role is at your respective companies, and how long you've been there. John?
Thanks, Will. I'm Jonathan Tam. I'm the COO of FIGS, and I've been here for 17 months.
Okay, great. Paige?
Hi, I'm Paige VanFossen. I'm Vice President of Operations here at DHL, and I've been here for 5 years, and I support FIGS.
Excellent. I'm really glad to have both of you with us today on the podcast. You both have relatively short tenures in your current organizations, but I know you've both been in the industry for a long time. So maybe could you tell us about your longer career histories? John, starting with you.
So prior to FIGS, I led operations at Revolve, another publicly traded e-commerce player. I was there for 12 years, doing everything from distribution, fulfillment, shipping, and dabbling in CX and things on the site and inventory.
Okay, great. And how about you, Paige? Where were you before DHL?
Prior to being at DHL, I actually was on the other side of the table with a retailer, L Brands, which most people would probably know as Victoria's Secret and Bath and Body Works. I was there for 30 years, and most of my time was spent, I can't even say in e-commerce, because when I started, there was no e-commerce. It was a catalog business, but I've always been in direct-to-consumer.
Excellent. And as the viewers can see, we're all in separate places today. Paige, where are you calling in from?
I'm in Mount Vernon, Ohio.
Okay. And John?
Pasadena, California.
Okay. So we are all over the place. I'm in Columbus, Ohio, close to Mount Vernon. John, FIGS is one of those if you know brands. There's a lot of passion for the people who do know, but for those who might not be aware of what FIGS is, can you tell us what the brand does, who you serve, and what kinds of goods you make?
Sure. I'll start with the second part. We are there to support healthcare professionals. I think we got a lot of the spotlight in the middle of COVID, where a lot more people were being treated, and our brand was in more presence. Our goal is always to support healthcare professionals. We were starting the brand well before COVID, and we're best known for our scrubwear. We would say it's better fitting, better quality than a lot of the scrubwear that medical institutions now provide healthcare professionals because they supplement it. And by going with us, we've implemented some elements of fashion as well as performance and better fit throughout scrubwear.
Okay, great. That is helpful, and we'll come back to some of those points as we talk further here. So the company was not founded during COVID, but relatively recently. What is the background history of the founding and kind of how the company is developed?
So it was founded by two women, Trina and Heather. And in the middle of business school, they found that there's a huge opportunity to improve the healthcare apparel industry. And it was a huge industry, bigger than anybody expected. And they started producing products and technically selling it out of their trunks at hospitals. And very quickly they got a lot of traction, and they said, hey, this is something that, a lot of healthcare professionals need to improve their workplace. And it was at a time when digitally native brands could take off because you could plug into a lot of platforms. You didn't have to build everything yourself. And that's when they really started to grow. And my involvement, as I met Trina in about 2016, I already started to see, wow, this is really getting a lot of traction. There's a lot of healthcare professionals, and they were kind of that first player to market that had substantial volume and marketing behind them. And now if you go into a lot of medical institutions, you'll see that majority of the healthcare professionals are wearing our products. So we've now gained that momentum.
That's terrific. That's really good. So, Paige, how did DHL and FIGS come together?
Well, I want to say it was back in 2022. FIGS, as John mentioned, has had pretty explosive growth through, its short lifetime. And they were in a multi-client facility that they were quickly outgrowing. And they were looking for a partner that could support them on their journey of this explosive growth. And, they had put the feelers out to find a partner that could do that. And that's how we met and, ended up doing business together.
Okay, great. And where do you guys do business physically? Where are you located?
We have the FIGS site is in Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay. So John, I know you weren't involved with the DHL FIGS relationship at the get-go, but I know you've selected logistics partners in your career over time. How do you think about partnerships? How do you select partners? How do you evaluate them once the relationship gets started?
To me, it really comes down to fit, and not only a fit financially and in the short-term future, but also aligning the partnership to be successful in the future. And I think one thing with DHL and why I feel like there is a really, really strong fit is that the ways that FIGS is planning to and intending to grow align well with how the DHL business also supports companies in growth. And one example I would use is embroidery. When we have a lot of customers that want their names and titles and logos on their scrubwear, and it's something that's not very common in the digitally native space. And when we work with DHL, it's something that's, oh yeah, we've been able to support other brands or other companies doing this. We have some experience. Obviously, there's nuances to how we do it, and DHL is very receptive and open to understanding what those are and saying, hey, we want to work with you. We want to figure this out because we think it'll be better for our infrastructure and our system and our capabilities. Let's figure out how this can benefit FIGS, and we've been able to do that.
Excellent. So Paige, you were there at the front end, correct?
I was.
Okay. So thinking about, and I know you've worked with other customers and thinking about this notion of fit that John introduced, how do you, from a 3PL or provider standpoint, think about tailoring your fit to match up with the customer's requirements?
So there's a few pieces of fit that I think are really important. I think the first one is cultural fit. I think one of the things we really look for when we are wanting to do business with a customer is that we are aligned on our values and on our cultures. Whether it's how we think about managing people or how we think about the environment or any of those aspects, are we aligned there? Because we're going to be working together very closely for our entire relationship, and we want to make sure that we're speaking the same language regarding those things. But also just when we think about the challenges of a business like FIGS, one of our sweet spots here at DHL is really providing custom solutions for customers that are large and have high velocity demand, and those things are not things that can be replicated across every customer, that these are going to be unique, and we have the skill sets and the teams that are able to ingest all of the data and all of the things that John's team provided us as background, and then take that and turn those into a custom solution that will work specifically for FIGS and help them in their growth.
Great. So before we dive into the solution, we've talked about fast, high growing, high velocity. Just maybe if we could dimension, John, the scale of the business. You started from selling out of trunks in 2016 to where is it today? And you can use whichever metric you think is going to help us the most, whether it's revenue or units sold. Tell us about the FIGS business profile overall.
So 2026, we're projected for 750 million. So big growth compounded over what we were doing out of trunks. And that equates to something like 16 to 17 million units shipped. So again, there's a lot of fulfillment needs to be able to process that type of capacity out of any distribution center. And then I think the other one that is really critical to our business is the profile of the orders. We do have very, very spiky periods where something like Nurses Week, we're very strong over Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So supporting it not only throughout the year, but understanding when there are periods that are very, very sharp, how do we work together with DHL and make sure that our customers are getting their orders quickly?
So with the rapid growth of the business, sort of the complexity of the operation, the knowledge that you were going to have to adapt over time, how did you think about the initial solution setup in the facility? What kinds of decisions were you making with respect to automation and different enabling technologies that could help with the peakiness as well as the expected business growth?
Based on the total peak volume, we really knew that automation was going to be a must, and it was just about what type of automation. So we actually evaluated 3 or 4 different types of automation, even manual. So we looked at manual, like cart picking. We looked at locust robotics. We looked at the current solution, which is a gray-orange zero walk solution, and then another similar type of system. And we weighed out, the capital investment that would be required, the productivity and number of people that would be required to run the system, and then obviously the overall output that the system could produce. And based on all of those different variations, we landed on the gray-orange zero walk system as the one that would be flexible enough to accomplish what we needed. As you mentioned, it is a peaky business. It's got very large peak to average volumes, not only for the 2 or 3 sales that they have during the year, but they also have peaky months. And the gray-orange system, based on the amount of training required to be up to speed for our associates, which is really only a couple of hours, provided us the most labor flexibility, which is what we need in a very peaky business.
Peak to average ratio, what does that mean in your world?
So as I mentioned, when I was talking about the first year, like our average day was around maybe 30,000 units, but our peak day was over 150,000 units. And so we would do the math of 150 to 30 and say, that was roughly 5 to 1 peak to average ratio.
Okay, great. Thank you. John, as a COO, there's a lot going on in the marketplace. You were with us at the Manifest conference talking about the multitude of vendors who were at that event, and I'm assuming you get looks at different technology solutions every day. How do you evaluate those things? How do you know where you've made the right investments? How do you know when it's time to make a change potentially? It seems to me like it would be a lot for somebody in your chair, but I wondered if you could tell us.
A lot of it does come down to when you're looking at different profiles of different businesses, because those are what really make the businesses unique. And when you can understand the different partners and technologies, they are usually designed for specific profiles. So as Paige said, we do have this peak to average. I would also say we also have this dynamic where we are a uniform business, so you would think it's very repeatable. There's a lot of regulations on what colors and how many sizes, but then we also have this element of fashion, which is we try to introduce a lot of new colors and new styles, and that creates a profile that, you have a lot of SKUs or more SKUs than you would think for a uniform business, and you have people ordering different tops and bottoms and colors. So that's one reason the gray-orange robot is also really successful for our application, is because it addresses that profile where you're able to take a lot of SKUs and still get a lot of efficiency. And I kind of take that approach when I think about partners throughout the operations, where understand the profiles that they're very successful in, understand the attributes and the businesses that are also using those technologies and partners that are very successful, and then just understand the companies and the people behind the companies and make sure that, hey, are they aligned, kind of like what Paige said, cultural fit? Are they understanding that, hey, they want to grow with us, they understand what our missions are, and they're aligned to do that? And generally, if they are, it can be a really, really healthy partnership where we have enough volume, we have enough, we are a cornerstone brand on a lot of platforms that we can help push them and understand how to explain to them what they need to build so that they can be successful with other partners. But at the same time, we can extract the value of them being good fits and having good attributes for the different profiles of our business.
Great. So describe for the listeners what the gray-orange robots and technology system look like physically, and what, kind of how do they move and what do they do?
The audience, a good physical kind of representation is kind of a Roomba robot. So it has a motor, it has sensors, and it's basically a very flat, round robot that can go under a shelf and lift that shelf above the ground, and then be able to navigate among a field of now over 100 robots and bring certain shelves to certain places in the warehouse. And by doing that, we can have our pickers essentially not move at all and spend their time really just extracting goods off of shelves, as that's the biggest challenge in an e-commerce facility, is that you have an order profile where people can order any items on the site in any permutation, but to have somebody go and walk a warehouse to put those two items together in a box can be extremely laborious and take a lot of time. So by having the robots bringing the shelves and then adding a lot of layers of complexity and science in terms of which shelves they should bring at which times to which locations, we're able to extract and use a limited number of pickers and have them really productive as only grabbing goods out of boxes versus spending a lot of time walking to the different boxes and selecting the goods to grab. So I think that's like a very simplified way to describe the zero walk solution. And then we support those pickers also with other robots that are similar in that they take the goods then from those pickers and sort them into different containers that represent orders.
Paige, how do you train your staff to work with these technologies?
So, we take them out onto the floor to a specific training station where a trainer will stand with them for, a period of time and go through the process and what it takes to pick. And literally what it takes to pick is very little. A shelf will arrive at your station. A light will then shine onto the cubby in which you're supposed to pick from. You pick that item and you place it on the bot on the other side of you and push a button, and that's it. And so the training really is that simple. Of course, there's other training that we do just to onboard them into DHL, but the training on the process itself is relatively easy.
Okay, and do the associates enjoy working with the systems?
The associates really do enjoy it. It does make their job a little easier. I've been in direct-to-consumer / e-commerce for most of my life at this point, I think. And the number one job that associates hate the most is pushing a pick cart down a pick aisle. And this eliminates that. It's tough. It's a lot of walking. It's cumbersome, especially if you're carrying an RF gun. And this takes all of that away. And it really, just allows them to, less wear on their bodies, and they're able to, simply do their job and feel successful.
Okay, so back to the peaky nature of the FIGS business. And I heard mention of Nurses Week. I know there are traditional peak seasons in retail overall, but John, can you talk about kind of how FIGS goes to market with its customers and how you are introducing these types of promotions or sales throughout the year, and what I think we talked about the ratio, but what you expect out of those events in your business.
I think the best way to describe how we align is we really want to celebrate healthcare professionals, and what we try to do is align sales and promotions along with celebrations and events in a healthcare professional's career and life that they want to celebrate. So the one we just did last week was Match Day. So that's the day in the year that healthcare professionals or aspiring healthcare professionals get matched with their residents and the program of their choice. And it's something that, there's a lab or white coat ceremony and all of these fancy things. And we want to celebrate that. So we have a promotion and we try to, offer, sales and things like that. And the one coming up next, the major one would be Nurses Week. So it's a week that I think we have helped grow to provide a little bit more focus to the backbone of the healthcare system, of all the nurses that work grueling hours, tough shifts, and see some of the, really, really challenging parts of what we all see in life. And we want to celebrate them. So we have a week-long promotion aligned with Nurses Week, where not only are we going to offer promotions and sales, but we also want to celebrate them by offering launches of new colors, new products, things that can help them feel celebrated. And throughout that week, we'll expect to get over 2 million units. And working with DHL Supply Chain, we send them, a forecast, which units we think are going to sell and in which volumes and when those sales are going to come in, so we can properly align and focus on how do we make sure that we run a really smooth operation so that those orders and units get shipped out promptly.
This may be a loaded question, but how accurate are your forecasts for these peak periods?
Great question. I would say more accurate than you would think. For most e-commerce businesses, especially when you have an element of fashion, it's very, very hard to predict with any level of accuracy who's going to buy what, right? We've done I would say a pretty good job of being accurate where we think it's very critical, where the things that are going to move a lot and the things that need to move quickly, like such as these launch colors, launch styles, things like that, then we will be off. When there's the fringe styles and sizes where we don't expect to sell a lot of them, that's where we will have a little bit more inaccuracy in our projections. But generally speaking, I would say we're pretty good.
Paige, how do you see it, and how do you think about taking a forecast and setting up your staff and operations in a way to absorb it?
So, this is where the partnership comes in, because this is us and FIGS working together to really, as John said, on the surface, it's pretty accurate, but the more you get down under the covers to the SKU level, that's where it gets a little bit more volatile or dynamic. Part of what we have to do to prepare for these sales is load the gray-orange field with product. We don't want to wait till the last minute. This is going to be a very high velocity event, and we don't want to be slowed down by replenishment. So we do our best to get as much of what we think is going to be in the field into the field for us to pick in advance of these sales. And sometimes that isn't completely accurate, but we always work together to get the best forecast, align on really how much should go in there based on the velocity of the SKUs, et cetera, et cetera. So, we really work closely together, number one, to make sure that we are aligned as we can and prepared as we can. And then we have to, be able to react to, what has changed. And that's, I think, again, a testament to the solution that we implemented with Gray Orange, because it is very flexible for us to be able to add labor. There's only so much we can add. There's only 30 pick stations. So that's as much as you can do in a day is what you can do in 30 pick stations. So it's also working with Gray Orange to understand what levers we can pull to get the most out of the system we can. And depending on the profile that is, coming at us, those levers might be different. It is a very complex and dynamic operation that requires us to partner closely with our FIGS and our Gray Orange partners to make sure that we're able to support the volumes.
Great. So John, and we talked about it earlier, and obviously with the growth, you've hit something in the healthcare market. I know these aren't just the standard blue scrubs that you typically see in or I guess maybe used to typically see in a hospital. You've talked about different colors, different fits, and all of that. How do you guys take your customers' feedback and put it into sort of your product development life cycle, and then how does that factor into supply chain planning, both on the source and make and the fulfillment side?
The first piece is we definitely have a very, very tight loop when it comes to customer experience. Every time a customer reaches out, there's an opportunity that they're giving you information that can help you grow or fix problems in your supply chain. And then the second piece is the way we've grown is mostly in the domestic US. Now we're taking a product that works very well in the US healthcare system and applying it with nuances to a lot of other countries. And every country and every healthcare system has its own kind of profile, whether it's specific colors or in certain parts of the world, specific sizes that work better for healthcare professionals. And we're starting to take that feedback and learn and use that to adapt and continue to grow in a lot of these countries. And while doing that, we need that to influence how we're building our supply chain so that whether it's out of the Arizona facility or as we look at other facilities, we're managing those products from every step, from production to inbound manufacturing to getting all the raw materials to then distribution. So when you talk about how does that inform our supply chain, we're looking at where our customers are throughout the world and understanding how do we get them product from the raw material all the way through distribution in the most cost effective and personally we need to keep it very fast. The modern day is now no longer waiting 3, 4, 5 days for stuff. Everybody wants things in 1 or 2 days, so we have to factor that in as well.
Yeah, well, speaking of that, you told me that FIGS is starting to set up some storefronts, correct?
Yes, we are at 5 stores now. We opened 3 from the end of last year to the beginning of this year, and there's planned for many more in this year.
Yeah, and you told me a good story about, I think you went to the Chicago store opening, which was, I think you said the weather wasn't great, but tell us about the crowd that showed up for that.
So it was the weather. It was, cold in Chicago in January. And then on top of that, you had a Chicago Bears playoff game. And a lot of the team was like, well, what's going to happen here? Are we going to get a big turnout? And we had hundreds of healthcare professionals waiting outside in the cold. We provided some nice warm drinks and some screens to watch the game, but they were waiting outside in the cold just to get an early look at getting into the new FIGS store in Chicago. So we have a very, very loyal and dedicated community that we're, making products and serving.
That's got to be fun to be part of all of that. Paige, are your operations supporting the store distribution as well?
We are. Right now, we do pretty much all of the outbound processing for FIGS, and that includes all of their stores.
Great. So store expansion, international expansion, what else is coming up for FIGS? John, let's start with you.
Stores international is already a lot. We are doing a lot more on the B2B business side, so working with larger institutions and developing programs and platforms for them. Along with DHL, we're also doing a lot more in the customization space. I think that's an element of the fashion where as we localize, you can imagine, store-specific, city-specific type product, being able to customize that. And then I guess lastly is we're looking at the whole uniform. We're not sticking to only scrubwear. There is product innovation happening all the time, and we're finding ways that we can continue to celebrate healthcare professionals by providing them with the right equipment.
Yeah, excellent. So Paige, how does that translate for you?
So, 4 years ago when we started this journey, I don't know that FIGS completely knew, what the journey was going to look like. And so they were just starting to think about stores. And so along the way, as they have been listening to their customer, responding to what he or she wants, and developing a strategy for growth, we have been alongside of them, responding and reacting to, what do we need to do in the operation to better support or to support their growth. So whether that means capacity for more retail or capacity, helping them implement a new system to improve their embroidery processing. We work with them to do that. So we're really, as John thinks about international, we are, listening to him and talking about, where can we give him visibility to operations in those regions so he can go see them and think about, where the right place to grow is.
Yeah, well, growth is always great and exciting. I know it's a first-rate operation out in Phoenix that you guys have partnered on. Look forward to hearing more about future growth with FIGS brand and seeing more of it in the market, and hopefully seeing it spread around the world. So we'll look to check back in with you, John and Paige, sometime in the future. But until then, I wish you both really good luck and enjoy Nurses Week.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to rate us and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also listen to our entire library of episodes on our website, dhl.com/ABNB podcast. See you next time.